What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Hi, Jason, Warriors fan here. You and JJ Redick are my go-to guys for quality hoop content, and I appreciate every bit of effort you put into the show. That's very, very kind of you to say. You mentioned three things the Warriors need to do to get back into the middle of the pack contention this coming season. I agree with all three: Pods, JK, and Curry. I'm surprised that you didn't mention Wiggins. I believe he's a great swing factor in our front court and can affect the game on both ends when he's fully locked in and ready to go. What impact do you think an improved and motivated Wiggins can bring to the team? Thanks in advance. Obviously, Andrew Wiggins, the version of him that we saw in 2022, brings a ton to the team. He was one of the best perimeter defenders in the league that year. I still think he's really good in that area. That hasn't been the primary area of his decline, but he brought that to the table. But he was a good three-point shooter that season. And most importantly, he brought like legitimate scoring bursts. Like he was getting like, it was not uncommon for Andrew Wiggins to end with 20, 22 points in a game just by hitting those open threes, but also driving closeouts. And then he was doing a lot of semi-transition attacking, like getting into the lane and knocking down that little floater in the lane that he would make when he would just rip through, take the contact, and then elevate and knock down a shot. Wiggins was really good in that season. And there's no doubt that if he was that version of himself again, it would mean a lot for this Golden State Warriors team. Here's the problem. When someone tells you what they are in a large sample, don't fall for the small sample. So like, for instance, Andrew Wiggins was really, really good in 2022, but he's been rough since, and he was rough before that. He's been in the league a long time now. And so I'm kind of the opinion that that was the outlier and that this is more or less the real Andrew Wiggins. And so with that being the case, like obviously we're all rooting for that. It just seems somewhat unlikely. And I think it would be, I think we're setting ourselves up for disappointment if we count on Andrew Wiggins being that type of player again. Although I don't always agree, you are one of the few that takes thoughtful and thorough approach to analyzing basketball. My question: Jimmy Butler has recently been compared by another YouTuber to LeBron James in terms of style of play. Given how James and Curry played during the Olympics and the rumors about Butler getting traded with the Warriors as a possible destination, how do you see the fit of Butler and Curry, and do you believe that would make them a title contender this year? Note, of course, this question assumes that Butler has a similar skill set / playing style as James, and that the James Curry fit in the Olympics can be replicated even if the talent is a tier below. So I don't actually see too much of a similarity between LeBron and Jimmy Butler. I would almost look at Jimmy Butler, if he were to play for the Warriors, as like a juiced up version of Andre Iguodala, right? Like Andre Iguodala brings a lot of the similar type of like when he was in his prime, or I shouldn't say in his prime, but in his prime with the Warriors in that 2015 to 2017 phase. During those years, Andre Iguodala brought like high level playmaking. He was a great connective piece, elite on the ball defense, just like all of these little dirty work things, which we know Jimmy Butler can do and do really well. The big difference is Jimmy Butler can also run action, right? Like you're going to dump the ball into the post to Jimmy and run split action with Steph running off of off-ball screens with Jimmy in the post as a scoring threat. That's a real weapon there, right? Just having Jimmy in two-man game with Steph Curry, because Jimmy's going to be guarded by a bigger forward. Steph's going to be guarded by a quicker guard. Jimmy can attack quicker guards in the post. Steph can attack bigger forwards in space, right? There's so much other offensive elements that Jimmy brings to the table, but he could also function when Steph has the ball as like a juiced up version of Andre Iguodala. And so like, I think Jimmy would be a great fit with the Warriors, kind of fits their short-term goals as well of trying to just rebuild a championship caliber roster around Golden State. The thing is that Miami's probably going to be looking for a good amount of talent in return there. And it's just whether or not you can find a deal that actually makes sense. But I think Jimmy would be a beautiful basketball fit with Golden State. The slow-mo praise, meaning Kyle Anderson, the slow-mo praise is justified, but wasn't he just saying that Anthony Edwards had no one on his team that could make a play when the ball was forced out of his hands, and using slow-mo Conley? Conley's a good offensive player, so that's not who I was talking about. Slow-mo Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Rudy Gobert were the main four guys that I had issues with. So here's the thing. I understand what you're saying. There's just a huge difference between being a dribble handoff fulcrum for the Warriors with a bunch of movement shooters, where it's mostly about like hitting cutters And then the ability to attack the rim and make kick out passes in inverted spacing. That's very different than what was happening to Minnesota. What was happening to Minnesota is they were packing the paint. And now it's becoming an issue because Kyle Anderson can't hit shots over the top of the defense. Golden State inverts the spacing because of the fact that guys are coming off these dribble handoffs, guys like Buddy Hield, guys like Brandon Podziemski, guys like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson in the past, they're coming off of those dribble handoffs. It inverts the spacing. So it's not as important for the role players to shoot as it is for them to be able to attack the rim and quickly make decisions in those situations. Very, very different than the issue that Minnesota was having. And so again, Kyle Anderson is the type of player that I actually like in the inverted spacing of Golden State, but I don't like in the system that Minnesota had where the paint was clogged and it was more about the ability to hit shots over the top of the defense. No way Trey Lyles starts, and DeMar hasn't been a 2 for a while now. And we're talking about the Kings. He almost exclusively played the 3 or the 4 for Chicago the last few years. My guess is the starting lineup looks like this. De'Aaron Fox with Keon Ellis, DeMar DeRozan at the 3, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. It's possible that that's the direction they go. As you mentioned, DeMar DeRozan has played a lot of 3 at this phase in his career. My issue is if you have DeMar DeRozan at the 3 and Keegan Murray at the 4 with Sabonis at the 5, your overall length and athleticism on your front line is like basement in the NBA. And so it's one of those things where you sacrifice a lot defensively on the glass in those situations. I do love the idea of Keon Ellis guarding at the point of attack. He's just such a natural fit there. And in the universe where you could put Keon Ellis at the 2, DeMar DeRozan at the 3, and like a bigger, stronger forward at the 4, I'd be on board. I won't be surprised if they try that. And that lineup will be very good in some ways. I just worry about the overall size and athleticism if you're running DeMar DeRozan and Keegan Murray at the 3 and the 4. That's pretty damn small and unathletic. Hello, Jason. Always like listening to you when you analyze. As a Knicks fan, I have a question about Julius Randle. And that is the playoffs. I felt like last season before he got hurt, I thought he was going to have a good 2024 playoff run, especially when he played alongside OG Anunoby because he was making quicker decisions and not holding onto the ball as long. He attacked mismatches in the post with his strength and speed and has become more of a willing passer and committed to playing defense. So my question to you is that going into next season, especially with the Knicks having a chance to compete/win a title, do you believe that Julius Randle has a better chance of performing well in the 2025 playoffs since he has OG and now the addition of Mikal Bridges? Appreciate your time and continue to do great work as always. I am actually a huge believer that Julius Randle's game is built to play well in the playoffs. The problem is he consistently is hurt right before he gets there, or in the case of last year, hurt when he's there, right? But Julius is a rhythm player. In order for him to be a useful kind of bully ball forward, he needs to be kind of like really dialed in with that little left shoulder fade that he hits when he kind of bullies his way in and then just kind of leans back and shoots over his left shoulder. Also just handling the ball, not losing control of it, making good reads, those kick out passes that you're talking about. And what ends up happening is he comes into the league hurt, or comes into the playoffs hurt, and he just is kind of out of rhythm, and he just kind of struggles to be as effective and efficient as he usually is. And he's missing all those threes. He's missing all those short fadeaways. He's not in as good a shape, so he's not defending as well. And it ends up making him look like a bad playoff player. But every single time he's coming into that situation hurt. I don't want to see Julius Randle get into a playoff run where he's played for 3 straight months going into it. And so that he's actually operating like peak Julius Randle at that point. The thing that I like about Julius Randle is when games get ugly, and you got a guy who's big and strong and can attack mismatches in the post, that is a huge value in the NBA playoffs. We've just never seen that really fully realized for them because he's always injured when he gets there. So again, I believe Julius Randle can be a useful player for the Knicks. He's just got to be healthy and available. And he's got to be willing with this group, with the shortcomings of their front court. Like Mitchell Robinson's going to be out till December or January. Your backup center spot is really weak right now. Tom Thibodeau never really used Precious Achiuwa at the 5, not very often at least. So it's one of those things where if Julius Randle is going to play a lot in the front court as a 5, like a small ball 5, he's going to have to defend and rebound at a really, really high level. And that's just a lot to ask. And so if he commits to doing all those things, this team has the talent to accomplish great things this year. It's just going to be about whether or not those guys are willing to accept smaller roles. Again, anytime you have lots of talent in the room, everyone's got to really, really be willing to accept roles, or you're going to get diminishing returns. All right, last question. How do you have Miami with 2 top 25 players at 18, but Orlando with 0 top 25 players above them? Well, because those 2 top 25 players includes a guy in Jimmy Butler who is kind of on the downslope and is hurt a lot, right? And has missed significant chunks of the regular season as of late, right? Also, Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero were both in my preliminary list for the top 25. They just didn't actually make the top 25. But I didn't see much of a gap between them and the guys at the tail end of my top 25 list. So beyond that, the Magic have a lot of talent down the roster. They have a lot of really gifted two-way role players, a lot of size, a lot of athleticism. Jonathan Isaac is a weapon. Wendell Carter Jr. is a weapon. Jalen Suggs, one of the best 3-and-D guards in the league. The KCP edition makes them it's a high-level starter upgrade that makes things a lot easier for them. He's also a movement shooter, which is something they haven't had in the past, which will accentuate a lot of their like inverted ball screens where Franz and Paolo get a guard to set a screen for them. Like, I just think overall Orlando's a better team. Now, that said, like, if Miami's healthy and Jimmy Butler's playing like Jimmy, then yeah, and we're in the playoffs, yeah, that's a different discussion. But heading into this season, looking at it from the context of October all the way through June, at this point, I think Orlando's a little bit of a safer bet. That's all I have for today. One last thing. I've been doing with my buddy Luke reactions to every episode of The Rings of Power. So if you haven't checked that out yet, wherever you get your podcasts under Two Sons Podcast or on YouTube under Two Sons Podcast, you can check out some Rings of Power content. I will be back on Wednesday with another one of these videos. Don't forget to drop mailbag questions. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting the show, and I'll see you next time.